My older sister had the hardest time getting an American name for herself because Mauritia did not translate into English. Ironically, although she had the most foreign-sounding name, she and I were the Americans in the family. We had been born in New York City when our parents had first tried immigration and then gone back home, too homesick to stay. My mother often told the story of how she had almost changed my sister's name in the hospital. After the delivery, Mommy and some other new mothers were cooing over their new baby sons and daughters and exchanging names and weights and delivery stories. My mother was embarrassed among the Sallys and Janes and Georges and Johns to reveal the rich, noisy name of Maricia. So when her turn came to brag, she gave her baby's name as Maureen. "Why'd you give her an Irish name with so many pretty Spanish names to choose from?" one of the women asked her. My mother blushed and admitted her baby's real name to the group. Her mother-in-law had recently died, she apologized, and her husband had insisted that the first daughter be named after his mother, Maureen. My mother thought it the ugliest name she had ever heard, and she talked my father into what she believed was an improvement, a combination of Maureen and her own mother's name, Felicia. "Her name is Mauritia," my mother said to the group. "Why, that's a beautiful name," the new mothers cried. "Mauritia, Mauritia," they cooed into the pink blanket. Mauritia it was when we returned to the States 11 years later. Sometimes American tongues found even that mispronunciation tough to say and called her Maria or Marcia or Maudy from her nickname Maury. I pitied her. What an awful name to have to transport across borders. My little sister Anna had the easiest time of all. She was plain Anne, that is, only her name was plain, for she turned out to be the pale blonde American beauty in the family. The only Hispanic-seeming thing about her was the affectionate nickname her boyfriend sometimes gave her, Anita, or as one goofy guy used to sing to her to the tune of the Chiquita Banana advertisement, Anita Banana. Later, during her college years in the late 60s, there was a push to pronounce third world names correctly. I remember calling her long group house and a roommate answering. "Can I speak to Anna?" I asked, pronouncing her name the American way. "Anna," the man's voice hesitated. "Oh, you mean Anna." All right, so here I want to pause and I want to ask you a question. Why do people mispronounce names? As you can see here with these moms in the hospital who are actually being really sweet or trying to be, they encourage Julia's mom when she gives them the wrong name. I don't think they're trying to be mean, and I don't think most people are trying to be mean. In fact, I think there's two reasons why people mispronounce names. The first reason I think people mispronounce names is because it's unfamiliar to them. It's just not a name that they're used to seeing. And the second reason why I think people mispronounce names is because if it's a name from a different language than they speak, then the sounds involved might actually be unfamiliar to them too. For example, when I lived in Japan, when I was teaching there, my name was actually pretty difficult for people to say because the sound s doesn't exist in Japanese. They just don't have that sound. And so a name like Jessica didn't really work in most Japanese mouths. So my students and my friends there called me Jessica with a sh sound instead. And I wasn't insulted by this. I knew that they were doing the best they could with my name based on their linguistic background. So that's also something to think about. That being said, I do think that when we find someone whose name we don't know how to pronounce, it's probably the polite thing to do to make sure that we learn how to say their name as correctly as we can. Don't you think?